Section 1. The Crisis of Silence. Somewhere between the moment you pierced the veil of illusion and the first rays of new understanding broke through, you discovered an unexpected void. At first it felt like an oasis, stillness unfurling where turmoil once reigned, a sacred hush that whispered, "At last you are free." Yet as days passed, that hush deepened into a cavernous silence, a silence so profound that it no longer felt restorative, but unsettling, as though the very heartbeat of purpose had dimmed. You had been led to believe that spiritual awakening would ignite your life, filling you with clarity and unshakable conviction. Instead, you found yourself standing in a room stripped bare, your old motivations abandoned at the threshold. The goals you once chased, career milestones, social approval, even relationships anchored in expectation, now rang hollow. You felt as if someone had pulled the rug out from under your ambitions, leaving you suspended in mid-air, safe yet uncertain where to land. This is not apathy born of laziness or disinterest. It is a liminal state often misunderstood. In Jungian terms, it is the space between ego collapse and the emergence of the self, your persona, shaped by societal norms, childhood conditioning, and personal stories, has faltered. But the self, that deeper, authentic core, has not yet fully taken form. You are neither who you were, nor yet who you will be. In our modern world, this inner stillness is frequently mislabeled as depression or a sign of personal failure. Friends ask, "Why aren't you moving forward?" And you struggle to explain that the fire which once propelled you has simply evaporated. External drivers feel meaningless because they no longer mirror your inner reality. The world spins on, urging you to hustle, to set new targets, to produce results, yet your soul recoils from this frantic pace, craving its own tempo. Recognizing this silence as a necessary phase is crucial. It is not a dead end, but a holding pattern, a chrysalis stage of the psyche. Right now, you are dissolving what no longer serves you, so that space can be made for what truly aligns with your being. Though it may feel ominous, this silence is not an enemy. It is the invitation to listen to a quieter voice, the one that has been overshadowed for so long by noise and distraction. In time, if you allow yourself to stay with it, this void will reveal its purpose, to clear away the debris so that a more authentic, soul-led life can begin. Section 2. The Dissolution of the Old Self. There comes a moment in every genuine transformation where the old self begins to fall apart, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a slow, quiet erosion. You start to feel like a stranger in your own life. Your habits, your roles, even your voice in conversation, they all seem to belong to someone else. This dissonance is not a malfunction. It's the sign that your inner architecture is being dismantled. Carl Jung understood this as the ego's necessary death. The ego, the identity you've spent years constructing, is not who you truly are. It is a mask, a persona built to survive, to fit in, to be accepted. But when the soul begins to stir, this mask starts to crack. You can no longer pretend. The scripts you once followed no longer work. You may find yourself withdrawing from social circles, losing interest in your career, or questioning long-held beliefs. These are not signs of failure, but of deconstruction. You are not losing yourself. You are losing who you were never truly meant to be. Jung likened this stage to alchemy's Negredo, the blackening, a necessary descent into darkness. It is here that the ego loses its throne and the unconscious begins to rise. Shadows come forward, old wounds, buried fears, repressed desires. They surface not to torment you, but to be seen. This is the painful blessing of the dissolving self. It reveals what was hidden. In this stage, many people panic. They want to go back to the comfort of their old routines. But going back is no longer possible. The bridge has burned. The only way out is through. The dissolution of the old self is not the end. It is the clearing of the stage. It is the sacred unmaking that must occur before something truer can be born. In the silence of who you no longer are, the potential of who you could become waits patiently, quietly, just beyond the ruins. Section 3. Jung's individuation process. the Negredo and the soul's dark night. Carl Jung believed that true psychological and spiritual growth could not happen without passing through a dark night, a stage he symbolically called the Negredo, borrowing from medieval alchemy. In alchemical tradition, the Negredo is the blackening, the beginning of transformation, where base materials rot and dissolve before they can be purified. Jung saw this as a metaphor for the soul's necessary descent into chaos before renewal. During this phase, the light of certainty vanishes. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you will become. You are in between, adrift, uncertain, raw. This is not depression in the clinical sense, though it can resemble it. It is an existential unraveling. It's what mystics and poets have called the desert, the belly of the whale, or the underworld. But here's what's crucial. This darkness is meaningful. Jung emphasized that this inner descent isn't a mistake, nor is it to be bypassed. It is sacred. Why? Because it allows the unconscious to emerge. The rational mind, so used to control, finally cracks open, and in the silence something deeper begins to speak. In this sacred night, your shadow shows itself, not to destroy you, but to invite you into wholeness. All the parts of yourself you've denied, feared, or hidden begin to knock on the door. And while this is terrifying, it's also the beginning of freedom. For only when we face what we have buried can we begin to integrate it and become more than we were. Jung's individuation process is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness demands that we meet ourselves in the dark, not to conquer it, but to understand it. So if you're in a place where everything feels unclear, empty, or even meaningless, know that this may be your Negredo. And know too that this is where the real work begins, not in chasing light, but in sitting with the dark long enough to let your soul catch up. Section 4. Laziness or sacred pause. Reframing the stillness within. In today's fast-paced world, stillness is often mistaken for laziness. If you're not producing, not striving, not improving yourself, society labels you as stuck. But from a Jungian and depth psychological perspective, this in-between space, this apparent inactivity, is often where the most vital inner transformations take place. After the Negredo, you may find yourself in a strange limbo. You wake up not with fire and purpose, but with a kind of weightless uncertainty. You don't want to return to your old life, but you also don't know what new life you're meant to create. From the outside, it may look like you're doing nothing, but inside the soul is quietly reassembling itself. Jung understood that the unconscious does not operate on our schedule. It doesn't care about your productivity goals or 5-year plans. It moves like nature, slowly, cyclically, organically. What feels like a breakdown might actually be a breakthrough in disguise, but only if you can stop pathologizing your pause. This sacred pause is not a failure. It's a waiting room between two identities. One has dissolved, the other hasn't yet formed. If you rush it, try to bypass the discomfort with distractions or force clarity before it's ready, you risk returning to an inauthentic life. But if you stay in it, really stay, you might begin to hear a new voice. Not the voice of the ego, but the quiet intuition of the soul. We live in a culture that celebrates action and disdains contemplation. But the soul does not grow through speed. It grows through depth, through silence, through allowing. So the next time you feel like you're wasting your life by being still, consider this. Maybe your soul is building something behind the scenes, something so new, so real that it can only emerge in the silence. Section 5. The quiet birth of new motivation. When your old identity dissolves, something unexpected happens. Your old desires, goals, and ambitions stop making sense. You used to crave success, recognition, adventure, or stability, but now, even thinking about those things feels hollow. It's not that you've become apathetic, it's that your inner compass is recalibrating. Carl Jung described this phase as part of the individuation process, a necessary step where the ego is no longer in charge and the self begins to stir. But the self doesn't shout. It doesn't hand you a checklist. It whispers. At this stage, you might feel like you're drifting. You wake up with no hunger for the day, The activities that once energized you now feel forced. You try to rekindle old passions, but they don't light. This isn't depression in the clinical sense, it's something subtler, the absence of false fire. The energy that once came from pleasing others, achieving status, or avoiding your pain, it's no longer available. But in the silence, a new kind of motivation begins to emerge. It's quieter, gentler. Instead of pushing you outward, it draws you inward. You may feel a pull toward simplicity, toward nature, creativity, authentic connection. You may feel called not to conquer the world, but to be present in it, to contribute in a way that aligns with your deeper truth. This new motivation is rooted in soul, not ego. It isn't always efficient. It doesn't come with applause, but it brings peace, and it asks something radical of you. Trust. Trust that your inner world knows where it's going. Trust that the emptiness is not a void but a womb. As the old you falls away, don't rush to replace it. Let the new life find you. Let meaning arrive on its own terms, not as a goal to chase, but as a presence to receive. Section 6. Aligning with life. You've crossed a threshold. The world you once knew, full of noise, ambition, and urgency, no longer holds the same grip on you, and perhaps, for the first time, you begin to ask, what if life isn't something I need to conquer, but something I need to cooperate with? Carl Jung believed that healing doesn't mean returning to who you once were, but becoming who you truly are. And to become that, you must learn to stop resisting life, not in defeat, but in deep collaboration. Modern culture teaches us to dominate, to control outcomes, maximize productivity, optimize ourselves into perfection. But the soul doesn't speak that language. The soul speaks in symbols, in dreams, in synchronicities. It doesn't care if you're efficient. It cares if you're real. This is the paradox of awakening. You lose the illusion of control, but gain a new form of power, presence. You begin to live not from the mind's plans, but from the heart's rhythm. Instead of asking, what should I do with my life? You begin to ask, what does life want from me right now? This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become responsive. You listen. You move with the current rather than against it. You allow life to shape you, even when it's uncomfortable, because you trust that it's shaping something true. In this space, meaning returns, not as a grand mission, but as quiet depth. A conversation with a friend becomes sacred. A walk through the woods becomes a sermon. You no longer need to chase purpose. You embody it. And maybe this is what the soul was trying to tell you all along, that you were never lost, that there was never anything to fix, only something to become. In the end, awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about finally arriving in it. So if you're in that silent, strange space, where nothing seems exciting, where you feel disconnected from the old, but unsure of the new, take heart. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not lost. You're just in the in-between. The sacred pause before a new life begins. Stay with it. Trust the quiet. And remember, the darkness is not the end. It's the womb of something deeper, something more you than you've ever known. This isn't the breakdown, it's the becoming. If this spoke to something deep in you, subscribe for more reflections like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. You never know who might need to hear exactly what you have to say.